Barsanti. I'm CEO and founder of StorageLife. If you want to learn more, StorageLife.com. Check us out. All right, cool. Let's dive in. So today we're talking about how to master owning and operating self-storage remotely. I bought self-storage in 8 different states, including the U.S. territory of Guam. The U.S. territory of Guam is a 17 hour flight from here. So when it comes to remote management, I say this takes the cake. And yes, we figured out how to do it. Was it easy? No, but we did it. I want to start by saying that if you can make $1 million, let's say buying a facility in Michigan, and you don't live in Michigan, but if there's a facility there that can make you $1 million, that has $1 million of upside, why would you not do that deal, right? It doesn't matter how far it is. If you know there's $1 million of upside in a deal, why would you not do it? So the reason I start with that is I want to encourage you to think and realize that there's opportunity all over the country. And so if there is a deal across the country that takes you a long time to get to, but there's a ton of upside on that deal, why would you not do that deal, right? You would, and you should. The challenge of self-storage is not how can I run it, it's how can I find the next deal. As you know, StorageLife, we're huge on acquisitions. That's one of our strengths. Is we don't believe you just need to know how to do self-storage and operate it. You have to find deals. You have to pound the pavement. We pride ourselves on being experts at off-market acquisitions. That's our secret. That's how we've been able to scale, how I've been able to buy 18 storage facilities in the last 5.5 years, and also wholesale over a dozen, excluding that 18. So it doesn't matter how close you are to the deal. It matters how much this deal is going to change your life, how much of the upside this deal has. Now, I understand that a lot of people want to be close to their first deal. They want to drive to it. But what I'm going to challenge you on is you don't have to drive to it. And in fact, it may actually hurt you in the long run, because typically I don't go to my facilities more than once, and I go when we're under contract, right? The most important part of visiting in a facility is like when you've put eyes on that facility, you're doing your due diligence, right? You're checking out the facility, you're looking at all the units, meeting the manager, right? That's the most important part. Other than that, you may never ever have to visit your facility ever again. So if you have a facility that's say an hour drive from you and you feel comfortable doing it, let's say you buy that deal, and that deal tends to be a lot of work, not a lot of upside. Hey, cool, you've learned the business, you've learned how to operate, but let's say you spent 12 to 24 months and a lot of time and effort figuring this deal out, and because it didn't make you a lot of money when it comes to financially, it hasn't been a financial big scaling point in your career. The way I like to look at deals is every time I buy a deal, if it's a great deal and we make significant income, that income then it rolls and generates into the long-term game, right? Building wealth, real big wealth and big freedom by making big moves, by having big wins, right? And we evolve and we expand as an operator. And so these big deals, we find them mostly off market, and they're deep discounted, and they might be far away, and they may be hard lifts, and they might be super distressed. But if that upside is so significant that it's going to change our game and change our life, we're going to do it. We're going to figure out how to do it. So going back to this idea of being close, I want to encourage you to think otherwise. You do not have to be able to drive to your facility. And why also may it hinder you is because if you can drive to your facility, you may end up doing things that you should probably hire out. You're going to the facility, you have to lock something that got broken into, you had a partial fire. You actually don't need to be there. The better you get at building these systems, especially to be able to manage storage remotely, the more you can scale. So again, encouraging you guys to build this foundation, these systems that will allow you to buy all over the country, no matter how far or close you are to these deals, right? So let's talk a little bit more about managing remotely specifically. The number one thing is you got to hire the right caller, right? The right person to answer the phones. And it's tricky because depending on whether you have 1, 2, 3 or more facilities is depending on your options. So if you buy a facility, let's say, and it's generating about 10,000 of revenue, it may not make sense financially to hire a full-time person, but you need to answer the phone full-time. You guys know it. You need to answer the phone 7 days a week. There's a third-party property management that can do this for you. They're very expensive. I have not had very good success. We tried it once, and in fact, we went to one of the best or most well-known third-party property managers, and it was a disaster. So we're not fans. There's a new company out there called Happy Storage that is a pretty cool option, and they're like a hybrid call center / property management, but they're super affordable. Most importantly, you got to find somebody that's answering 7 days a week. So the other great option is I found typically that we end up with, usually it's a female for whatever reason, and they're usually like semi-retired, retired, they're in their 50s or so. It doesn't have to look like this, but they want to work, but they don't want to work a lot, and they love working from home. And that situation works well. Well, they're answering your phone 7 days a week till 10 p.m., right? That's how you outperform a lot of your competitors. You're always answering the phone. You can't miss a rental. Those are hard to come by, right? Those are hard to find, but they're doable. Otherwise, you're gonna have to break it up. You have somebody answer potentially like 8 to 5, and then find somebody that's gonna answer your phone like 6 to 8, and then on the weekends. It's all doable, but it's all a matter of how much money do you have to spend. Now, when you have 3 or 4 facilities, it's really cool because you can have the same person remotely operating and answering the phones for all 4 of those facilities. And now your expense load has literally cut down to 25% of what it was with that first facility. That's huge. But again, Happy Storage, HAPPI Storage. I think they're revamping, so don't try and look them up yet, but they're gonna be around. They're gonna be a huge help at a deep discount. Otherwise, it's a call center, but I've had terrible luck with a call center, so I'm not a big fan. And then after you got that in place, you need your boots on the ground. This is by far another really important component. Sometimes your boots on the ground is somebody that you're also answering your phones. We just hired a new person. I had the help of my operational manager, Dion. He's been working for the big guys for 15 years, so he has a ton of experience, but we were able to go in. We hired somebody at minimum wage, full-time, answering the phones. The other cool thing that you have to tell them is they're not going to actually be working 40 hours a week, probably. There's going to be some slow times, depending on how large your facility is, but this guy was really eager, excited to answer the phone 7 days a week. As long as there's a renter, he's going to answer the phone. Minimum wage, and then we have a huge bonus incentive program, and I want to really express how important that is. A bonus incentive program, so even though he's only making minimum wage on the front end, he's going to get paid for rentals, you're going to pay for tenant insurance, auto pay, Google review. He's heavily incentivized for performance, which is exciting because that means we've set up a bonus structure where he's going to actually be able to make a lot more than his base pay. That's how we do that. How do you find boots on the ground? You can put up a local ad for somebody. We often find a lot of times that there's an existing manager on a facility. When we buy it, we'll vet them and figure it out whether if they're a good fit or not. Otherwise, sometimes a tenant is actually a great boots on the ground. How we're doing most of the time now, which is actually off-site managers answering phones at a handful of facilities each, and then we have a local boots on the ground that is making typically $150 to $200 a month, going to the facility 1 to 3 times a month, depending on how busy or how large the facility is. And that person usually is handy. A lot of times they're a tenant who rents there that's been there for 15, 20 years, loves the facility, treats it like their own, and they happen to be handy, and they go to our facility 1 to 3 times a week. They check for trash, they do a walkthrough, they make sure that every single unit has a lock on it. If it doesn't have a lock on it, somebody either moved out without telling us, there was a break-in, somebody forgot to put their lock on, but every one of our units needs to have a lock on it. And then it's a very simple walkthrough once a week, twice a week. And then once they do the walkthrough, they send it to our manager that's somewhere else, and they say, hey, unit 5, 20, and 30 don't have locks on them. We figure out why, and then we clean them out, whatever the scenario may be. We fix that, and then we put a lock on them, and then we go back to business. So that's our boots on the ground. We love when they're handy. We love when they're local. The other way to find one is if throughout your due diligence and buying the deal, maybe you had to do some CapEx and paint, gate, electrical work, whatever it was, through that process, eventually you're going to find hopefully one subcontractor or contractor that you're like, man, this guy or gal, they're great, they're reliable, they're friendly, and it sounds like they've also been in the community for a really long time. A subcontractor or contractor like that usually has deep connections to the community, and that's also where we typically can find somebody very handy, potentially a boots on the ground. Sometimes it's a painter that also stores his equipment at your facility, and he has some spare time to be the boots on the ground. So that's how that looks for us. Last thing I'll say is make sure that your keypads integrate with your software. So even if you already have a good working keypad at a facility, when we buy one, we want to make sure that keypads can integrate with our software. So if somebody's late, we lock them out right away so they can't go in after they owe $500 in delinquent rent and they sneak in and move out without telling anybody. So we like to lock them out of the software right away when they're delinquent. And then the last part of this boots on the ground and management is one just kind of like side tip and note is key to the boots on the ground and manager is somebody who's staying up on your delinquent accounts. People who are late, people have been late for 30 days or longer. You have a system that's going to allow you to quickly send out those lien letters when it's time, and then to actually put those auctions into place, right? And a lot of these are online auctions, whatever they are, but regardless, somebody that can actually help do that and help keep things moving and take pictures for you and be willing to put in that work. That's huge. And that, again, a side tip on when you're hiring these boots on the ground and you're off person answering phones, be able to help you with auctions is a huge help. So wrapping this up, don't be afraid to manage remotely. You just have to figure out the right system, because obviously if there's a deal out there that's going to really be a cornerstone in your career, make you $1 million or millions of dollars, you're going to do it no matter how far away it is. It's the deep discounted properties that are really going to change your game. Those are the ones that really move the needle forward. Is it wrong to go buy a local facility that's 100 units and you buy it for $450 and you exit for $600 in 12 to 24 to 36 months? No, you made a little money, you made a lot of progress, you learned a lot. I would rather see, and my students, I'm a huge proponent of this and encourage this deeply, that buy a facility hopefully that's going to make you a few hundred grand, $500,000, maybe even $1 million, whatever, a big shift. You'll learn a ton, you'll learn how to manage remotely, and then guess what? You'll have so much more confidence to rinse and repeat. Again, we'll buy in any state, really, if it makes sense, if it pencils out. That's what really matters most. Buying deals, making that money that are going to really change the game for you. Guys, we'll see you next week. Hope this helps. Thanks so much. All right, good luck. Peace.